Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Gary Whitmore. I'm 36 years old and today, I live in a sleek, glass-walled estate outside Sedona, Arizona, where red cliffs and silence meet power and wealth. I'm the founder of a real estate tech firm valued at nearly $500 million, and the only thing more precious than my business empire is my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She's the reason I breathe. But 4 years ago, I was no mogul. I wasn't living in peace. I was living in shame. Back then, my life was a crumbling illusion. My daughter and I shared a one-bedroom apartment in South Phoenix, with water stains on the ceiling, a flickering hallway light, and dreams too big for our cracked kitchen tiles. I had nothing but debt, a second-hand car that coughed every morning, and the deep, gnawing ache of rejection. All of it, courtesy of the family that once promised to love me. You see, I was adopted. Martin and Eleanor Whitmore brought me home when they couldn't conceive. For a time, I was their pride, until they had children of their own, Marcus, Celeste, and Brianna. That's when everything changed. I went from being their miracle to being a permanent outsider. A fixture in their lavish Scottsdale mansion but never really a part of the frame. I tried, though. God knows I did. I shadowed my father at his firm, spent summers doing office errands while Marcus interned with investment banks in New York. I laughed at Brianna's terrible jokes, helped Celeste with calculus, and still, I was just Gary, the adopted one. When I was 25, Martin made what he called a strategic decision. He arranged my marriage to Angela Prescott, daughter of one of his longtime business partners. She was stunning, sharp, and as cold as the crystal chandeliers in our gated mansion. We had Lily 2 years later. And the day I held my daughter for the first time was the day I swore, no matter what happened with Angela, no matter what the Whitmores did to me, I'd protect Lily. The marriage fell apart fast. Angela drank. She cheated. She screamed in the middle of the night, even when Lily was within earshot. I tried everything, therapy, forgiveness, second chances, but nothing could save it. Eventually, I filed for divorce, full custody, no alimony. Angela didn't fight. She just walked out one day, leaving her wedding ring in a glass of bourbon. That's when Martin snapped. He called me to his office at Whitmore Global Holdings. His voice boomed, "You dare humiliate the Prescotts? You shame this family. You're nothing without us, Gary." I told him I left to protect Lily. That Angela had endangered her. That no family name was worth my child's trauma. But Martin didn't care. He stripped me of everything. Fired me in front of the board. Took back the house. Froze the trust fund he once said would be Lily's future. Publicly disowned me as if I were just an error he could delete. And my siblings? They laughed. Marcus cornered me in the parking lot as I packed up my things, grinning like a hyena. You never belonged. You were the charity case. Now you're just a nobody. That night, I drove Lily to our new place. It wasn't even ours, just a rental with mismatched carpet and flickering lights. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes wide. "Why aren't we going home?" I crouched to her level and tried to smile. "This is home now, baby." She didn't cry. She just nodded and squeezed my hand. That broke me more than any words could. The days that followed were gray. Not just the sky or the stained wallpaper in our tiny apartment, but my soul. I'd wake up before sunrise, make a weak pot of instant coffee, and sit in silence while Lily slept soundly, her little arm draped around a threadbare stuffed unicorn. I remember thinking, how did it come to this? From polished boardrooms to delivering groceries in a borrowed uniform. From dinners at country clubs to couponing for cereal. I took whatever jobs I could. I washed cars. I fixed broken laptops. I even cleaned a dentist's office at night, just enough to afford Lily's school tuition, which Martin, of course, had stopped paying. But I didn't care about pride anymore. I only cared about Lily. She was my only reason for breathing. And she never once complained. She drew smiley faces on our fridge with crayons. She made up bedtime stories about a princess who lost her castle but built a better one with her bare hands. She kissed my forehead when I came home sweaty and exhausted, saying, "You're my hero, Daddy." But no matter how hard I worked, it felt like the world was tightening around me like a noose. The Whitmores never called. Never visited. Never even asked if Lily was okay. My sister Brianna threw a lavish engagement party 3 months after Martin cut me off. I saw pictures on Instagram, hundreds of smiling faces beneath golden balloons, champagne glasses raised. I wasn't invited. Neither was Lily. Marcus posted a photo of his new Porsche with the caption, "Work hard, play harder. Earn your legacy." I wanted to laugh. He hadn't worked a day in his life. That legacy came from a father who handed him everything while I cleaned toilets and scraped together Lily's lunch money. One night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat on our apartment balcony and cried, really cried, for the first time since I was a teenager. The worst part? I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for her. For the birthday party she never had. For the friends she didn't invite over because I was too ashamed of our living situation. For the silence she filled with bravery. And for the fear that maybe, just maybe, Martin was right, that I'd never be enough. That I'd always be just the adopted one. That thought haunted me for months. Even as I built my little electronics repair shop. Even when customers started coming back, and I managed to buy Lily a real bed instead of a mattress on the floor. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the humiliation. I couldn't forget how fast my so-called family had erased me, like a typo in their perfect public image. Then, the phone rang. It was Linda, a former executive assistant at Whitmore Global Holdings who had always been kind to me. "Gary," she said quietly, "I thought you should know. Your father's in the hospital. Heart attack. It's serious." I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could do was stare at the floor. "He keeps asking for you," she added. "But he won't admit it. You know how he is. Too proud." I hung up without replying. That night, Lily was sketching a cat in her notebook when she looked up and asked, "Daddy, is Grandpa sick?" I paused. "How did you know?" "I heard you on the phone," she said gently. "Can we visit him? I want to say hi." I almost said no. The idea of seeing Martin, frail, bedridden, after he'd thrown me out like garbage made my stomach churn. But I looked into Lily's eyes, those big, innocent eyes, and nodded. "Okay. We'll go tomorrow." And we did. But I didn't walk in. I stood outside his hospital room while Lily went inside. She sat by his side, told him stories about school, our cat, the stars she'd named after her dolls. I stayed in the hallway, heart pounding, just listening. Then something strange happened. Martin laughed. Not a big laugh, just a soft chuckle. But it was real. It was warm. It was the sound of a man who'd forgotten how to smile, until a child reminded him. He didn't know I was there. And I wasn't ready to speak to him. Not yet. But Lily? She went back the next day. And the next. Every time I dropped her off, she'd skip down the corridor like it was a playground. "Grandpa likes my drawings," she told me once. "He keeps them in a box next to his bed." I didn't know what to say to that. She was building a bridge I wasn't sure I could walk across. But one evening, as I peeked through the door, I saw something I'll never forget. Martin, my adoptive father, the man who once called me a mistake, reaching out with a trembling hand to tuck Lily's hair behind her ear. "You're a lot like your dad," he whispered. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt seen. I didn't know when it happened exactly, but something shifted in Martin. The man who once ruled boardrooms with a cold iron will, the same man who cut me off like a diseased branch, was now quiet, fragile. He listened when Lily spoke. He smiled more. He even asked questions about me. "How's your shop doing?" he asked one afternoon, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "Busy," I replied from the doorway. "Enough to keep us going." He nodded slowly, then added, "You've done well, with her." I didn't say thank you. I couldn't. Not yet. Still, those words haunted me that night. Not in a bad way. In a way I didn't expect. Like a wound realizing it could still feel warmth. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Lily tugged on my hand as we left the hospital. "Grandpa gave me something," she whispered. "What do you mean?" She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. "He said to keep it safe. Just for me." I stopped walking. "Did he say what it was?" "Nope," she said with a proud little grin. "He just said, one day, give this to the man with the glasses after I go." The man with the glasses? I knew immediately who he meant, Mr. Kessler, Martin's personal attorney. I stared at the envelope, my stomach flipping. "Can I see it?" Lily shook her head. "He said no one could open it until he's gone." Her voice dipped at the end, suddenly soft, like she didn't want to say the words. I hugged her tight. "Okay, baby. We'll keep it safe." And we did. The days grew shorter. The air outside chilled. And so did Martin. The nurses said it could be weeks, maybe days. We never missed a visit. Even when he couldn't speak anymore, Lily would sit by his side and hum to him, holding his bony hand in hers. She never feared his withered frame, the machines, the tubes. She just loved him, purely, without questions. One night, Martin turned his head toward me. His lips moved, barely. "I was wrong, Gary." 3 words. But they hit harder than any slap or insult I'd ever received. He died the next morning. We were there. Me, Lily, and the elderly nurse who had come to adore my daughter's spirit. It was quiet, no gasps, no drama. Just a soft exhale. And then, stillness. At the funeral, I stood in the back of the massive marble chapel while my siblings, the real Whitmores, stood front and center. Marcus gave a smug eulogy. Celeste posed for photos in her designer morning dress. Brianna wept into a tissue she barely needed. Lily held my hand tight. "Do we have to stay?" she asked. "We're not here for them," I whispered. "We're here for Grandpa." After the last guest left, a man approached us. Thin, graying, glasses perched low on his nose. "Mr. Whitmore?" "I'm Gerald Kessler. Your father's attorney. He requested that all of his children, biological and otherwise, stay for the will reading." I almost laughed. "I think my invitation got lost." "It didn't," he said flatly. "He named you specifically. You and your daughter." That drew attention. Marcus scowled. "He doesn't belong here." Celeste rolled her eyes. "Dad already wrote the will 3 years ago. We know what's in it." But Lily stepped forward and held out the envelope like it was Excalibur. "Grandpa told me to give you this, Mr. Kessler." Everyone fell silent. Kessler took the envelope, broke the seal, and pulled out a folded letter written in shaking, blue ink. "This," he said carefully, "is a handwritten codicil to the original will. It is signed, fingerprinted, and witnessed by 2 hospital staff members. Dated, 6 days before Mr. Whitmore passed." Marcus scoffed. "That's not legal." "Oh, but it is," Kessler replied. Arizona recognizes handwritten wills if properly witnessed and signed. This supersedes the original document. He unfolded the paper and began reading. And what came next dropped jaws, mine included. I, Martin Whitmore, being of sound mind, do hereby amend my previous will. I leave 90% of my estate, including all real estate holdings, business shares, accounts, and assets, to my adopted son, Gary Whitmore, and his daughter, Lily. The remaining 10% shall be divided among my biological children, Marcus, Celeste, and Brianna. The room froze. Celeste's wine glass hit the floor with a crack. Marcus stepped forward like he was going to lunge. What the hell is this? He was manipulated. But Kessler held up the second page. Here are the witness signatures. 2 nurses. A doctor. Video surveillance confirms Mr. Whitmore's full cognition. No. No. Brianna shouted. You don't deserve a dime, Gary. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too stunned. Too overwhelmed. Lily looked up at me and whispered, he kept his promise, Daddy. And that's when I realized. Martin hadn't just changed. He'd made things right. They didn't leave quietly. The moment Kessler finished reading the will, the room turned into a battlefield of snarls and threats. This is war, Gary. Marcus snapped, jabbing a finger at my chest. You used your daughter to scam a dying man. She's 8, I replied, dead calm. She just loved her grandpa. That's something you'll never understand. Celeste paced in her stiletto heels like a rabid dog in a cage. We're suing. This will is a fraud. A joke. Brianna, still clutching her designer purse like it was her only lifeline, muttered something under her breath, probably a prayer, or a curse. They stormed out of the estate, but not before Marcus turned back and hissed, enjoy it while you can. We'll bury you in court. Kessler remained silent until the door shut. Then he turned to me. They're going to challenge the will. You know that, right? I nodded. I'm ready. But truthfully, I wasn't. Not yet. That night, I tucked Lily into bed in the guest room of the Scottsdale mansion, our mansion now, and walked the long marble hallway that once felt so cold to me as a child. And for the first time, it didn't. Now it held echoes of laughter. Of my daughter giggling by Martin's bedside. Of a quiet man trying to right decades of wrongs in his final days. But I knew sentiment wouldn't be enough. My siblings had money. Lawyers. Public image. They'd paint me as the outsider. The adopted son who wormed his way back in. And they'd fight hard. So, I had to fight harder. I called the one person who could help, Elena Vasquez, an attorney I'd worked with during a small land dispute years ago. Sharp, relentless, and incorruptible. You've got a handwritten codicil to a massive estate, she asked. Yes. Properly signed. Witnessed. Kessler verified it. And your siblings? Are circling like vultures. Then let's sharpen your talons, she said. We got to work. Elena requested every hospital surveillance footage from the week Martin wrote the letter. She subpoenaed the nurses and the attending doctor. She combed through digital timestamps, comparing them to security check-ins. We also began preparing for character attacks. Because we knew they were coming. I want every detail of your life ready to be turned inside out, she warned. They'll try to use anything against you. The divorce. Your old jobs. Your finances. I stayed up for hours each night, combing through every document, every message, every photo I had with Martin and Lily. I built a digital file showing every hospital visit, every drawing Lily brought, every smile Martin gave her. Then I began calling people, old employees from Whitmore Global, former nannies, even a few of Martin's business partners who had grown disillusioned with Marcus's reckless leadership. Not everyone agreed to help. But a few did. And what they revealed only added fuel to the fire. Marcus had been skimming from company budgets. Celeste hadn't visited Martin once during his final 2 weeks. Brianna had spent over $90,000 on a spiritual retreat in Bali while Martin lay in a hospital bed. I gathered it all. Because this wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about truth. About the years I spent being treated like a footnote in a story I helped build. About the daughter who showed more love in a single hospital visit than Martin's real children had in decades. And yes, if I was being honest, it was also about justice. Poetic, painful justice. I was no longer the scared boy who needed a family's approval. I was a father. A builder. A man who'd crawled out of a pit his own family threw him into, and now stood tall. But the most powerful piece of all came not from a document, or a lawyer, or a witness. It came one night, when I was rewatching footage from the hospital. There was Lily, sitting beside Martin, humming softly while coloring. And there was Martin, eyes half closed, whispering, "You remind me of him. Of Gary. He's got my stubbornness." It wasn't a legal statement. It wasn't evidence. But it was the truth. Even Martin, in the end, saw me as his son. Not his adopted son. Not his temporary mistake. His son. That was all I needed. Now I just had to prove it to the world. The first day of the trial was a spectacle. Reporters lined the courthouse steps like vultures circling a fresh carcass. "Disowned son battles biological heirs over billionaire estate," the headline screamed. Some paparazzi even tried to snap pictures of Lily and me as we walked in, hand in hand. I shielded her face, but she didn't flinch. "Daddy, are they the bad guys?" she asked softly. I looked down into her ocean blue eyes, the same eyes that once melted Martin's heart. "No, sweetheart. They're just lost." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. My siblings sat across the aisle, dressed like a mafia family in mourning, Marcus in a slick navy suit, jaw clenched, Celeste in all black, lips pursed and cruel, Brianna with a face full of disdain and fake sorrow. Their lawyer, Richard Grayson, was a silver-haired serpent known for flipping wills like pancakes. Across from them sat Elena, poised, fearless, and stone-faced. She gave me a small nod. It was time. The opening statements cut deep. Grayson painted me as a manipulative outsider, an opportunist who used his daughter to worm back into the life of a dying old man. "This is not about love," he said, gesturing dramatically. "This is about a man with no claim trying to steal a legacy." Martin Whitmore was vulnerable. He was dying. And Mr. Gary Whitmore saw his chance. I stayed calm. Because I knew what was coming next. Elena rose. She didn't need theatrics. "This case isn't about DNA," she began. "It's about family. It's about who showed up. Who cared. And who Martin Whitmore trusted with everything when he was no longer blinded by entitlement or appearances." Then the real battle began. Marcus took the stand first. He spoke like a polished sociopath. "My father always made his wishes clear. We, his biological children, were his legacy." Elena cross-examined him like a surgeon with a scalpel. "Is it true you were under investigation by Whitmore Holdings Board last year for misuse of corporate funds?" Grayson objected. Overruled. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Those allegations were unfounded. Do you deny using company accounts to pay for a Maserati, 2 Vegas trips, and a private suite at the Super Bowl?" Marcus clamped his mouth shut. The silence was damning. Next came Celeste. She wept, dabbing fake tears as she claimed she had a close spiritual bond with their father. Elena pulled out her phone and played security footage of Celeste visiting the hospital, for just 3 minutes. She brought flowers, took a selfie by his bed, and left. Brianna was worse. She painted herself as the forgotten daughter, claiming Dad favored Gary out of guilt. But when Elena revealed that Brianna had posted TikToks mocking Martin's illness, the courtroom gasped. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Then came the turning point. Elena called Susan Meeks, the head nurse from Martin's hospital. Susan walked in, firm but kind, and dropped a truth bomb. "I saw Gary and his daughter Lily visit almost every day. Sometimes he didn't even go inside. Just waited outside the room while Lily sat with Mr. Whitmore, telling stories or singing songs." "Did Mr. Whitmore ever appear manipulated?" Susan laughed, genuinely. "If anything, he softened. I'd never seen him like that. He told me Gary was the only one who showed him what real family looked like." The jury leaned in. Then came Dr. Patel, Martin's attending physician. He testified that Martin was fully coherent and mentally sound when he wrote the codicil. That he specifically asked for 2 nurses to witness it and insisted his decision was final. He said, "Gary may not be my blood, but he's the only son I raised right." That line hit harder than any argument. Still, Grayson tried his final card. He suggested Lily was used. "A pawn in my scheme." Elena stood. "We'd like to call Lily Whitmore to the stand." I stood abruptly. "No. She's a child. I don't want her dragged into this." But Lily tugged at my sleeve. "I want to, Daddy. Grandpa told me to be brave." She walked to the witness chair with her worn-out unicorn tucked under one arm. Dressed in her favorite green dress, she sat up tall and spoke with clarity that humbled every adult in the room. "I visited Grandpa because I loved him. Not because Daddy told me to." "Did Grandpa say anything before he gave you that envelope?" Elena asked gently. Lily nodded. "He said, 'You're the best part of me and Gary.'" Celeste scoffed. The judge glared at her. Elena smiled. No more questions. Grayson didn't dare cross-examine an 8-year-old girl who had just melted the courtroom. I hugged Lily as she returned to her seat, whispering, "You were so brave." She whispered back, "I learned it from you." For the first time in my life, I believed it. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. After Lily's testimony, we could have rested our case. The jurors were visibly moved. Even the judge had softened. But Elena wasn't finished. She stood and said 5 words that changed everything. "Your Honor, we have new evidence." My siblings shifted in their seats like snakes on hot coals. Grayson stood abruptly, objecting, but the judge allowed it. Elena turned to the projector and tapped her laptop. 3 weeks before Mr. Whitmore's passing, she began, there was an attempt to alter the digital copy of the original will, without his knowledge. That got everyone's attention. She pulled up a time-stamped screen recording from the internal system at Whitmore Holdings. The footage showed someone logging into Martin's estate file remotely, from Marcus's corporate laptop. "Objection." Grayson barked. "This is circumstantial." "Not at all," Elena said coolly. "Because we also obtained internal emails between Marcus Whitmore and a private notary, offering him $50,000 to forge an updated will." The courtroom exploded in murmurs. Elena displayed the email chain on the screen. And there it was, clear as daylight. From Marcus Whitmore to Daniel Keller, Notary Public. "I need this will rewritten. Don't worry about the old man, he'll be too far gone by next month to notice. I'll make it worth your while." Celeste gasped. Brianna looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Your Honor," Elena continued, "we have reason to believe Marcus Whitmore attempted to fraudulently secure full control of the estate, well before his father amended his will." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Grayson, do you wish to respond?" Grayson whispered frantically to Marcus, who now looked like a man watching his kingdom collapse. Finally, Grayson stood and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to confer with my clients." The judge shook his head. "Request denied." You'll have time when the jury deliberates. Marcus sat back down, seething. His entire plan, exposed. But the twists weren't done. Elena wasn't finished either. She called her final witness, Mrs. Irene Holloway. I turned to Elena, confused. I didn't know who that was. Then the courtroom door opened, and in walked the former maid of the Whitmore mansion. I hadn't seen her since I was a teenager. Irene took the stand, her silver hair tied in a bun, her voice calm but unwavering. For years, I watched how Gary was treated in that house, she said. He was always polite. Always tried his best. But those children, Marcus, Celeste, Brianna, they never saw him as family. And what about Mr. Whitmore? Elena asked. At first, Martin was distant. But when he fell ill, he changed. He asked about Gary all the time. Once, I found him crying while holding a drawing Lily had made. He said, "They're the only ones who make this house feel like home." Celeste stood up. "This is a lie." "Sit down," the judge barked. Irene continued. "One day, I overheard Marcus on the phone. He said, and I quote, 'I'll get that bastard out of the picture once Dad signs the new will.' I quit the next morning." The room went completely silent. The betrayal, the manipulation, it was no longer a theory. It was fact. Elena turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. Mr. Whitmore's final handwritten will wasn't just valid, it was necessary. It was his final attempt to undo the damage done by his biological children." Grayson stood, but there was nothing left to say. The judge dismissed the jury for deliberation. As they left the room, Marcus leaned toward me. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You're still nothing." But I didn't respond. Because I was no longer that boy begging for approval. I was a father who had already won, long before this trial began. Lily squeezed my hand. "Are we going to lose, Daddy?" "No, baby," I whispered. "We already won." The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. Every second ticked like thunder in my chest. Lily napped in my lap, her head resting gently against my chest, her fingers still curled around her worn unicorn. I looked around the courtroom, the same room where I was dragged, humiliated, accused. And now, maybe vindicated. When the jury returned, the foreman, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood with a folded sheet of paper in her hand. The judge read aloud. "We, the jury, find that the handwritten will of Mr. Martin Whitmore is valid, binding, and was executed in full mental capacity and free will." Gasps rippled through the room. "We further find that Mr. Gary Whitmore and his daughter Lily Whitmore are the rightful inheritors of the estate in accordance with Mr. Whitmore's final wishes." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. Celeste stood abruptly, her face flushed with rage. Brianna just sat there, stunned, mascara-streaked, mouth open but silent. And me? I didn't say a word. I simply held Lily closer, kissed her forehead, and closed my eyes. We did it. The courtroom emptied slowly, and as reporters began swarming the hallway, I turned to Elena. "Thank you. I don't even have the words." She smiled. "Just promise me one thing." "Anything." "Raise her right. Better than your father raised his kids." I nodded. "That's the only thing I've ever cared about." 3 months later, I stood in the family cemetery, just outside Scottsdale. Lily wore her favorite green dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers she picked herself. We stood in silence before Martin's headstone, the late autumn wind brushing against our faces. "I forgive you," I whispered. "For the years you kept me outside your heart. For the silence. For the pain." I knelt down, pulled Lily into my arms. "And thank you," I added softly. "For finally seeing me. For trusting me to protect your legacy, and your granddaughter." Lily knelt beside me. Grandpa's watching us, isn't he? I nodded. Yeah. And I think he's proud. We left the grave with quiet hearts and walked back to the car together, fingers interlaced. Now, we live in the very mansion I once walked through as a ghost. Only this time, Lily's laughter fills every hallway. I donated half the estate to charities Martin never supported. Started a foundation in Lily's name to help other adopted kids find real homes. Hired Irene, the maid who defended me in court, as our housekeeper, this time with full benefits, stock options, and a corner office in our family trust. And as for Marcus, Celeste, and Brianna, they took their 10% shares and disappeared. Some fled to Europe, others tried starting petty lawsuits that were all thrown out. I haven't heard from them since. And I'm okay with that. Because justice wasn't just in the verdict. It was in Lily's hug that night. It was in the first drawing she taped to the fridge in our new home that read, "Me plus Daddy plus Grandpa in heaven." It was in the peace I finally found. You see, for most of my life, I thought revenge meant getting even. But it doesn't. Revenge is truth. Revenge is holding your head high when the world calls you a mistake, and proving you were always the masterpiece. And in the end, all it took was 8 little words from my daughter, words that changed everything. Grandpa said Daddy is his real son. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.